decoding the fundamentals of crypto, one block at a time. Welcome to Chain Insights, where we analyze and break down the core principles of exciting crypto projects using cutting-edge AI tools. Always remember that our content is for educational purposes only and should not be considered financial advice.
All right, so today we're going to be diving into real-world assets, RWAs. You know those things that are usually tough to trade, like real estate or fine art or even like commodities? What if we could bring all that onto the blockchain?
Yeah, that's what a lot of people are thinking about. It's a huge deal. We could be talking about like trillions of dollars in value. It's just sitting there right now, hard to get to and trade. Imagine owning like a tiny piece of a Picasso, a little slice of a skyscraper in Manhattan, all thanks to tokenization.
Yeah, exactly. That's the big promise of RWAs. And today we want to figure out, who's really leading the way here. So we're going to do a deep dive into two projects that are making some serious noise, Ondo and Manda. From what I've seen, they're both tackling this challenge, but in totally different ways.
That's right. Think of it like this. ONDO is kind of like a bridge between, like traditional finance and DeFi. They're building tools and products within the existing blockchain world to make investing in RWAs easier and more efficient.
Okay, so they're working within the existing system, trying to make it better. What about Manda? What's their approach?
Manda is going all out on creating a whole new ecosystem. They're building a layer 1 blockchain specifically for RWAs from scratch. They're really focused on security and regulatory compliance, which is super important if they want to get those big institutions on board.
So Ondo is integrating, and Manda's building their own thing. Interesting. Let's start with Ondo. What are they doing to make RWAs easier to get into?
One of their main products is USDY. It's basically like a tokenized version of cash. They're saying it's a stable and low-risk way to get yield, kind of like an alternative to stable coins. It's designed to give you a return similar to what you'd get from like traditional money market funds, but with the benefits of blockchain technology, like, transparency and easy access.
That's pretty neat. So they're trying to make it easier for people to get involved in RWAs without taking on a ton of risk.
Yeah.
But how does USDY actually make that yield? What backs it up?
USDY is backed by short-term U.S. treasuries and those really liquid money market funds, which are generally seen as really safe and stable assets.
So it's like a digital version of a very safe, low-risk investment, but with the potential for better returns than a regular savings account. I can see why that would be appealing.
And to make sure it's super trustworthy and secure, they've teamed up with some big names in traditional finance, like Morgan Stanley, BlackRock, and even Ankara Trust. They handle digital asset custody.
Wow, those are some serious players. It sounds like they're really going all out to build confidence and reassure investors.
Yeah, exactly. And they're also thinking about liquidity, how easy it is to buy and sell these tokenized assets. They're working with centralized exchanges like Bybit, OTC desks like Wintermute, and even DeFi protocols like Uniswap.
So they're covering all their bases, making sure these assets are both safe and easy to trade. That's a smart move if they want to get all kinds of investors involved. But before we go too deep on Ondio, let's switch gears and talk about Manda. What makes their dedicated blockchain so special for RWAs?
Well, the first thing is it's built on the Cosmos SDK, which is known for its flexibility and security. Manda also claims it can handle up to 10,000 transactions per second. That's huge if they want to deal with a ton of RWA transactions.
That's impressive. But let's go back to security for a second. How's Manda approaching regulatory compliance, which you mentioned earlier?
They've come up with this idea of a permissionless chain for permissioned applications. It might sound kind of weird, but basically it means the blockchain itself is open and public. But they can build in compliance at the application level.
So developers building on Manda can make apps that follow specific regulations. Depending on the type of RWA they're working with, that's pretty innovative. It could open up a lot of possibilities for institutions that need to follow strict rules.
Absolutely. And speaking of possibilities, Manda has already gotten some big partnerships. They have a $1 billion deal with Damac, a big real estate developer in Dubai, to tokenize some of their properties.
$1 billion? That's a huge commitment. And I heard they're working with Google Cloud, too, on RWA tokenization. It seems like they're attracting some major players.
They are. And they've also built something called the MANTRA zone. It's like a gateway to the whole Manda ecosystem. It's where you can bridge assets from other blockchains, stake your OM tokens, which is Manda's native token, and explore different DeFi opportunities.
Okay, so they're building a whole ecosystem around RWAs with their dedicated blockchain at the center. It's a bold move for sure. But how does it compare to Ondo's approach of integrating with what's already out there?
That's what we're going to look at next. We've talked about the basics of each project, their main offerings, their strategies, and their early partnerships. Now, let's compare and contrast these two approaches to see which one might have the best chance of unlocking the true power of real world assets. So we've got these two players right. Ondo working within the existing DeFi space, and Manda building their own blockchain, kind of like a classic battle. Integration versus like total innovation.
Hmm.
Makes you wonder which way is going to be better for bringing RWAs to like the mainstream.
Yeah, for sure. For me, a big thing to think of is how each platform is actually tackling those real-world applications. We've talked about a few examples already, like Ondo's tokenized U.S. Treasury funds and Manda's move into fractional real estate. But let's dive a little deeper into those and see what other types of assets they're exploring.
Okay, let's start with real estate. It's been a hot topic in the RWA space lately. You mentioned that billion-dollar deal Manda has with Damac. What's cool about that is it's not just tokenizing a few fancy properties. They want to create a platform for fractional ownership of all sorts of real estate assets.
So imagine being able to invest in like a tiny piece of a shopping mall in Dubai or a skyscraper in New York City, all without needing millions of dollars up front.
Mm.
Pretty revolutionary,
It
right?
is. It could really open up real estate investing to way more people, make it more accessible and liquid. Real estate has always been tough to get into. High barriers to entry, tokenization could change all that.
I can see how that would be appealing, especially to younger people who are used to investing in fractions of stocks through apps like Robinhood. It's like taking that same idea and applying it to real estate.
Yeah, exactly. And on the Undio side, they're taking a different approach with their tokenized U.S. Treasury funds. They offer a way to get exposure to this asset class, which is known for being stable and low risk.
You mentioned this before, but it's worth repeating, especially for anyone who might not be familiar with the concept. Investing in U.S. Treasuries has always been limited to institutions and really wealthy individuals. Ondo is trying to change that,
Mhm.
making these investments available to anyone.
Exactly. And it's not just about access, they're also offering a way for investors to earn a yield on their holdings. Remember, USDY, their tokenized cash equivalent. Well, it generates that yield by investing in a mix of short-term U.S. Treasuries and money market funds.
Right. So it's kind of like a hybrid approach, combining the security of U.S. Treasuries with the potential for yield from money market funds. Sounds like a pretty good option for people looking for a low-risk, stable investment with a chance for some passive income.
Yeah, exactly. And it highlights a key difference between Ondo and Manda. Ondo seems to be more focused on creating these new financial products within the existing DeFi world, while Manda is more about building the infrastructure for RWAs to thrive on their own dedicated blockchain.
It's like they're playing different roles in the same game. Ondo is the financial innovator, creating new investment tools. And Manda is the builder, laying the foundation for a whole new world of RWA applications.
That's a great way to put it. And both roles are super important for the success of RWAs as a whole. We need both innovative products and a strong, secure infrastructure to support them.
Absolutely. But we can't forget about all the other asset classes out there. What about things like art, commodities, and intellectual property? Are Ondo and Manda looking into those too?
They are. Both platforms have said they're interested in tokenizing a wide range of assets. For example, imagine owning a fraction of a Banksy artwork or a share of a patent for some groundbreaking new tech. These are the kinds of possibilities that RWAs are opening up.
That's what blows my mind about this space. We're not just talking about making current investments easier to access. We're talking about creating entirely new asset classes, things that were impossible to invest in before. It's like a whole new universe of opportunities.
It is. And this is where fractional ownership becomes really powerful. You don't need to be super rich to own a piece of something truly unique and valuable.
It's making these assets available to everyone, which is really exciting. But it also raises some questions, like how do you figure out the value of a fractionalized asset, like a piece of art? And how do you make sure that ownership is secure and authentic on the blockchain?
Those are great questions. And they show how important regulatory clarity and technological innovation are. That's why Ondo and Manda are both so focused on security and compliance. They know that if RWAs are going to become mainstream, they need to work within the existing laws and give investors the confidence that their assets are safe.
Speaking of security and compliance, let's talk a bit more about how each platform is handling those things. We already touched on Manda's permissionless chain for permissioned applications concept. It sounds pretty innovative, but how does it actually work?
Well, it lets developers building on Manda include compliance features right in their apps. For instance, an app for tokenized real estate could have built-in KYC compliance, making sure only verified investors can participate.
So it's like building the rules of the game into the platform itself. rather than relying on external regulations or third-party providers. That could be huge for institutional adoption, since they often have to deal with complicated compliance rules.
Exactly. And it shows that Manda is really focused on getting institutions involved. They're betting that by offering a secure, compliant platform, they can unlock a ton of institutional capital for RWAs.
It's a bold move, and it'll be interesting to see how it goes. But what about Ondo? How are they approaching security and compliance since they're working within the existing DeFi system?
Ondo is taking a more traditional approach, relying on partnerships with established financial institutions and following existing rules. For example, their partnership with Ankura Trust, a big digital asset custodian, provides a layer of security and regulatory compliance for their tokenized assets.
So they're using the expertise and reputation of existing players in finance to build trust and make sure they're compliant. It's a more familiar approach, which might appeal to investors who aren't ready to jump into a brand new ecosystem like Manda's.
Exactly, and it's important to note that both approaches have their ups and downs. Manda's dedicated blockchain offers a level of control and customization that's hard to get in existing systems. But Ondo's integration with traditional finance gives them a head start in terms of adoption and liquidity.
Feels like we're at this turning point in finance. You've got the established players like Ondo working within the system, trying to make things more efficient and accessible.
Mm.
And then there's Mulda, the disruptor. Building something completely new makes you wonder which way is going to lead to more people using RWAs.
Yeah, that's the big question, isn't it? And to be honest, I don't think there's an easy answer. Ondo and Manda both have their good points and bad points. Ondo's advantage is that it's familiar. They're working with institutions we all know, using terms that traditional investors understand. That could make them more attractive to people who are a little hesitant to jump into DeFi.
Yeah. But Manda's approach, even though it's riskier, might be better in the long run. Building your own blockchain lets them create a system that's really made for RWAs without the limitations of old systems.
Exactly. It's a trade-off between getting people on board quickly and having huge potential down the road. Ondo might see some faster wins, but Manda could end up building a much stronger and more scalable ecosystem for RWAs. It's like choosing between a smooth paved road and a path that nobody's explored yet. The paved road is easier to travel on, but the unexplored path could lead to something amazing.
I like that analogy. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what are the key things you want our listeners to remember?
First off, the potential of RWAs is huge. We're talking about unlocking trillions of dollars and giving everyone access to assets that were out of reach before. This isn't just about making rich people richer. It's about creating opportunities for everyone to build wealth.
Yeah, that's what I find so exciting about this. It's not just about the technology, it's about empowering people. But it's also important to remember that this is all still pretty new. There are risks involved, and the regulations are always changing.
Definitely. You got to do your research, understand the platforms, and think carefully about your own investment goals and how much risk you're comfortable with. Don't just follow the hype. Understand what makes each project valuable.
So to all our listeners out there, as you're thinking about Ondo and Manda, remember that they're both pioneers in a space that's full of innovation. Ondo is bridging the gap between traditional finance and DeFi, and Manda is creating a whole new world for RWAs. Which vision speaks to you more?
And here's one last thing to consider. Will these dedicated RWA blockchains like Manda become the norm? Or will protocols like Ondo successfully bring RWAs into the existing DeFi world? Only time will tell. But one thing's for sure, finance is changing, and you're watching it happen.
It's an exciting time to be an investor, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And we'll be here to guide you through all the ups and downs. Until next time, keep exploring, stay curious, and happy investing.
If you enjoyed this breakdown and want more deep dives into crypto fundamentals, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow.